Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Evolution Now podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Terrance Johnson, always known as Mr. J. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, it is a pleasure. And always, I want to thank everyone for all the support. We know we went over 12 million views. I'm just super excited about that. Well over 70,000 followers in less than a year. For all intents and purposes, I've been told I'm doing a very, very good job, but couldn't get there without you, so thank you so very much. We're going to jump right into it. We got a lot to cover today. I want to thank all the guys on YouTube for putting the comments and things of that nature. I'm glad you're getting something out of it. Before I start the show today, I really want to address what is Evolution Now representing? What is it about? What are we trying to do? It is relatively simple. For you to evolve, to become the best version of yourself, with a realistic and practical approach to life and things of that nature, from your relationships with your significant others, to your children, to your colleagues, to your own self. And remember that your life matters and that there's no one on this planet like you. So with that being said, sit back, relax, take some opportunity to take some notes, and let's see if we can get some food for the soul, if you will, and let's move forward from there. So as always, I have my trusted colleague, Gus, in the building with me, and he's going to read some questions that have been brought to our attention. Now, hopefully I can answer them in a way that it makes sense to you and that you can apply this knowledge and wisdom to your life effectively. So with that being said, let's get started. Gus, what we got, buddy?
All right. Well, we had a lot of people contact us and asking about human nature and when you talk about human nature. So I think it would be a good topic to expand upon on this episode here.
Absolutely. You know, we were talking about the nature of people, There's always conversation going on behind the scenes prior to us taping. And one of the things we were discussing is the concept of the nature of people, or human nature. In other words, if you know someone who has a tendency to be an angry individual, that's probably within their nature to do so. Some people have a nature to lie, particularly men will lie to get what they want from a woman, and sometimes women will cry to get what they want from a man. So when we're looking at the nature of people, what I want you to do is become very observant of the individuals that you're dealing with, and pay attention to their nature and how they conduct themselves around you. Let me say this: if people aren't pouring into you, if they're bringing you negative information continuously, you're continuously, you have this one particular friend and they're just always, every time you talk to them, it's negative. Understand that because we are spiritual beings, anytime you engage in a conversation with someone, there's an exchange of energy. I want you to understand what I'm saying to you. There's an exchange of energy, be it with men, be it with women, it doesn't matter. And so usually what happens is, if you are a negative person and you continuously spew negative information to a positive person, let us use this example. Say a person has been bitten by a snake, right? And they've been poisoned. And now the other person is the antivenom, or the cure for that bite, all right? But if you're in constant communication with the snake biting you, eventually you're going to run out of antivenom, or either the antivenom is going to cure that person of their negativity. The point I'm trying to make to you is, whomever you are exchanging energy with, be it positive or negative, on some way, shape, form, or fashion, either it's entering into you the negativity, or you're giving them positivity to combat the negativity of that person. I know it might be somewhat of a long-winded answer, but I really want you to consider the energy exchange with the individuals that you're dealing with, particularly on a daily basis. This can be at your workplace, this can be in your own home, but understand it is your responsibility to guard your mind with all diligence. In other words, be very careful about the nature of people whom you have around you and the information you receive from that person. A lot of times we don't take into account how words affect how we feel, and how we feel usually is going to dictate what we do. So it's very important, when you understand the nature of a thing, it's much easier to navigate it, if you will. So I like to take time to always study the nature of people. And so if a person is known to be a liar, not that a person can't reform and don't lie, but the odds are, if they're known to be a liar, it will take a great deal of information for you to change your perception of them, because it's in their nature to lie. The same with a thief, the same with someone who over-exaggerates or embellishes something. So you must become very wise about the nature of people, but more importantly is to understand the exchange of energy between people. So do your very best to understand the nature of the people that you're around, and be very careful about the energy you allow into your space. All right? Hope that helps. What else we got, Gus?
Someone messaged us. They're going through some betrayal and they need some help dealing with that. What advice would you give them?
Betrayal is a tough one. You know, have I been betrayed before in my career? Yes, I have. There have been many a times, well, not many a times, but a few times where people you thought were your friends or close or loved ones or your family, you thought that they would ride or die, that they would be there for you through thick and thin. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. I saw a post that if betrayal was forgivable, then the devil would still be in heaven. But certain betrayals are not forgivable. Even though you might forgive the person, you don't forgive the act. I hope that makes sense. And so you see a lot of this happen in relationships. You'll see, say, if a guy has been unfaithful and he tells his woman, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do it again. And what does he do? He winds up doing it again. And then what happens? She winds up taking him back. And they find themselves in this vicious, unproductive cycle, this toxic relationship, if you will. And that door can swing both ways. It can be a woman that's been unfaithful and she begs her boyfriend or her husband to take her back. And she says, I'm not going to do it again. And as soon as he leaves out the house, you know, she's doing whatever it is she's doing. So what I would say to you about betrayal is this. The best way to deal with betrayal is to not let it consume you and not let it destroy you. It's oftentimes evil acts that are portrayed upon us as individuals, outside of the person committing the act, whatever it might be. The fact of the matter is, usually that act will take something from you. And I'm not talking about from a materialistic perspective, i.e. money, your home, your car, even though that happens in divorces and things of that nature. But more importantly, it takes away from you your peace of mind. It takes away from you your humanity in a sense, because it makes you become cold, bitter, non-trusting of people and things of that nature. So betrayal is a very, very, very tough thing to deal with. It's not something that's easily overcome. But what I will say to you, that any of you that are dealing with betrayal, you dealt with it, but more importantly, do not betray yourself. Do not let what another person does change you to the core that you are no longer the solid person you are, man or woman. So again, we hope that we don't get betrayed. Obviously, we don't want to be betrayed by people we care about, or hopefully that care about us as well. But unfortunately, it does happen in the world that we live in. What I will say to you is always ask God for a great spirit of discernment, to know the people you're around and the kind of people you're dealing with. You should learn to trust your intuition or your inner voice. And a lot of people might say that's taboo and things of that nature, but all of us have that inner compass, if you will. And if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. I'm gonna say this to you again. If it doesn't feel good, you probably shouldn't do it. If it doesn't feel right, you probably shouldn't do it. So our feelings are not only there to make us feel, but also to guide us. But we want to operate with that mindset with the great spirit of wisdom, because sometimes your own feelings and heart will deceive you. Okay, so it's a growth process, if you will. I pray that you don't have to deal with betrayal. I really do, because it's a very painful thing, but unfortunately it does happen in our society. But most importantly, don't let that betrayal make you betray yourself, because then ultimately the betrayal itself wasn't the main goal. The betrayal itself was to destroy you and for you to betray yourself and stop you from moving forward, whatever your endeavors might be. So I hope that helps.
How would you prevent people from using you?
Oh, wow, the big you. Being used. Listen, people use each other. This is an unfortunate thing, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but what happens when people use you and they don't reciprocate that same type of energy back to you, it can put you in a position where you're feeling drained, exhausted, whatever the case might be. What I will say to you, what I've learned in my 56 years of living, is to be very careful who I allow around me, and the only information they can use is the information that I can provide to them. And so what you wanting to do, again, is to become very selective. Just because you have information doesn't mean you have to share it, if you will. Just because you know certain things doesn't mean you have to tell it. You have to become very wise in who you choose to converse with in a way that whatever information I'm sharing with them or giving to them, there is a possibility that they might come back and use that against you. There is a possibility you might give them some information and they use you for the information, and it might be of some great benefit to them, and you don't benefit from that information. What I found is just best that whatever information I choose to give, I choose to give. The word is choose. I choose to do so. So in essence, I don't put myself in a position to be used because you're only using what I'm making available for you to use. I hope that makes sense. So listen, stop letting people use you if they are unappreciative of what you do. They don't pour into you. They want to take credit for your ideas, your knowledge, whatever it is it might be. You must understand this goes back to human nature. All of us have a need to feel important. All of us have a need to feel valued. This is very important, and it's also paramount in our development as human beings. However, most of us lie or embellish certain things about ourselves because we have this need, and what the need is from your ego. Edging God out, if you will, because that's what ego does. It edges God out of that equation and puts you in the center of that equation. I've learned over my 56 years upon this planet is to put God first. Not last, not in the middle, but first. As I share with my wife often, I make sure that we keep God in the forefront of our mind, not on the back burner. You know, you have a stove and you got 4 burners and you got that one burner in the back that's really small. That's how I think a lot of people see God until something goes wrong, and then they want to take that pot and bring it to the front power burner and then pour it over all the dishes and hoping that it's covering whatever they need. So again, people can use you, but if you're doing it freely, you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart because you really wanted them to be successful. Hey, some things you're just going to chuck up to the game. You chuck it up to the game, you move on, you move forward. My goal is simple. You could use this information that I'm giving you and you can apply it to your life. And hopefully it will be of some great benefit to you. I'm not looking to benefit from that. I'm hoping that you do. So in essence, you only feel used when you don't feel as though you don't get the credit you deserve. But a lot of times, if you're doing it out of the pureness of your heart, you're not looking for credit or even acknowledgement. The fact is you did what you did because hopefully you saw a need and you saw that whatever intellect or knowledge you possess, it would be useful to that situation, and then you did that. But unfortunately, some people will take advantage of that. They'll take an advantage of you. But remember this, and we'll end it on this note. People will only treat you the way you allow them to. People will only do to you what you allow. Remember that, because at the end of the day, it is your peace you have to protect. All right? Hope that helps. What else we got, Gus?
We had someone ask if you could elaborate on the phrase you mentioned on a podcast a while ago. No one is coming to save you.
No one is coming to save you. Too many of us rest on our laurels, and too many of us are slothful in our endeavors. No one is coming to save you. Let me be crystal clear about that. No one is coming to save you. Well, why would you say such a dire statement, Mr. Johnson? Because it's the truth. Outside of our religious beliefs or our spiritual understanding, and many people believe in many different things, I'm not here to address that or argue that point. But the fact of the matter is that most of us are in these positions that we find ourselves in because of the decisions that we made either early on or late in our life. At the end of the day, it is absolutely quintessential for you to understand your value and what you have to offer in this world, and it is entirely up to you to apply the things that you know in the world. Hopefully there are some value where you can monetize it. But too many people rely on other people to save them. Too many of us outside of senior citizens are relying on the government to take care of us. The country is $35 trillion in debt. There's no amount of taxes you can pay to alleviate that debt. The country is continuously changing from the regular dollar currency to now everything is going to digital or cryptocurrency, if you will. It would behoove you to take some time to go to YouTube or maybe even TikTok or Instagram and educate yourself on the world in which you exist, because ultimately the one thing that is constant in our society is change. The concept of change is simple, however, changing is not, because we develop habits and thought patterns that we find ingrained in our conscious and subconscious mind that enable us to operate in the world that we create for ourselves. Ultimately, no one is going to come save you. If anything, when you don't take the appropriate steps and make the effort to save yourself, unfortunately, you become a burden to others. This can be, i.e., family, friends, your children, or even your parents. Many times we waste time not doing what we need to do, but doing what we want to do. I beg to differ. It is absolutely imperative that one learns to do what he or she is supposed to do. Once you don't do what you're supposed to do, you leave yourself open to all types of possibilities and probabilities of things you most likely do not want to incur. However, all of this can be alleviated if one takes the time to study Studies. To study what? Study to show thyself approval. This is not just a spiritual concept, but this is also a worldly concept as well. Remember, most people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. It is just that simple. Most people will be destroyed in this oncoming destruction of the economy because a lot of people are invested in certain things, whether it be the stock market, whether it be real estate, whether it be insurance, whether it be cryptocurrency. Many of us have bad spending habits and we lack the discipline and the fortitude to do what is necessary to ensure our financial freedom, particularly as we get older. One might beg to differ that this statement is not truly accurate, but I would simply surmise this to you. Why is it that when so many people die, there's a GoFundMe? Because they did not prepare properly for their death. They did not prepare insurance policies or make sure they had the capital or the resources to bury their loved one. And so now they go out to the public. These things are only going to increase in frequency, and it is, in my opinion, they will get extremely worse. I surmise this to you. It is your life. It is your responsibility. No one else's. It is not your husband's responsibility. It is not your wife's responsibility. Now, there are obviously obligations we have to meet, both spiritual and fiduciary. I'm not negating that fact. But ultimately, your husband or wife will die. This is just the truth. We're all born. We're all going to die. It is up to you collectively as a team, or even you as an individual, to ensure that you put yourself in the best possible position to be successful. This is not the message that's going to be promoted on Instagram or TikTok and things of that nature, because these are the things that people need to do, but this is not what they want to do. You understand? So again, when you look at these things and you understand it in its fullness, you realize that the only one that can save you, and I'm talking about in this worldly realm, if you will, I'm not talking from a spiritual perspective, let me be clear. The only one that can save you is you. Well, how do I save myself? One is through education. Number two is through application of what you're educated on. Number three is discipline. Without discipline, nothing really manifests itself. You can't go to the gym for 3 days a week for 1 month and think you're going to be in great shape. It doesn't work that way. You can't say, I'm not going to stick to this diet for 3 days and then I go back to my old ways and expect to lose a tremendous amount of weight. It doesn't work that way. You can't expect to have a great, loving relationship after you and your significant other have gotten into an argument, and then you go home and you be with each other, and then the very next day you're arguing again. It creates inconsistency. So when you marry discipline, when you marry forward thinking, when you marry these types of attributes and characteristics into your own person, your education, your knowledge, your wisdom, and you apply it consistently, ladies and gentlemen, consistently, you're doing this consistently. It's part of who you are. Then you will find that you put yourself in a much better position to be successful. I know that was a long-winded answer, and I'm sure the editor will chop it up to where you guys can get something out of it, but go to the podcast to get the full extent of it, and I hope that information helps you.
Could you mind talking about being a good steward and responsibility?
Being a good steward, that goes back to what we were just saying. Many of us have horrible spending habits. You know, at the end of the day, I put out a post where I told you should pay yourself first. And there was a lot of kickback on that because people really missed the gist of the message. Understand that you must be a good steward over what's been given to you. And most of us are simply or not. Well, Mr. Johnson, I got to pay this, I got to pay that. You put yourself in that situation. Let's just be real. One of the things that I find with people, especially with my mentees, is the hard pill of accountability. I said, listen, instead of cutting back, why don't you just make more money? You know what? It's easier for people to say, let me just turn my lights off, because it only requires you hitting that switch. But if I say, listen, you're going to work 40 hours a week, and then you're going to apply another 20 hours a week to learning a different skill set. Now I got things I want to do. I want to go to the mall. I want to go to the movies. I want to go out to eat. I want to go to the club. I want to do all this other stuff, right? And while you're young, you really don't think it's a big deal because you're young. But I can assure you, one thing about being young is you get old fast. I'm going to say that to you again. One thing about being young is that you get old really, really fast. And so when you're not a good steward over what you have in your possessions, if you're maxing out credit card debts, now don't get me wrong, if you're in a situation, I got to pay these bills, I'm behind in a little bit, you know, I'm stuck in a little bit of a rut. Yo, I get it. I wasn't always in the position that I'm in today. But what I'm saying is how I got out of it was being honest with myself, taking an honest assessment of what I was doing. And most of us don't want to deal with that. Anybody can tell you to put a budget together. Putting a budget together doesn't mean nothing. It's can you stick to it? That's the challenge. That's the challenge. Can you do it? But when you're not a good steward, when you're spending money out to eat, you're spending $300 and $400 on dinner, man, you can go right to the supermarket and buy you $300 to $400 worth of groceries and eat at home. But because it requires effort, you got to get up, prep the food, season the food, cook the food, fix the plate, clean the dishes off the table, put the dishes in the dishwasher, and it's wash and repeat. You keep doing this. Hey, you might get burned out or whatever. Everything I did from a budget perspective. Was it difficult? To be honest with you, it's really not that difficult. What's difficult is you changing. It's really not that difficult. Once you understand and you have a goal in mind of what you're trying to achieve, usually it's not difficult. What makes it difficult is the old you, the old way you think, the old nature of doing things, the way you're used to doing them. That's what makes it difficult for you. But in essence, it's really not that difficult. You must become a good steward over what you have. You must become a good steward over what you have. Without it, you are simply delaying the inevitable. Well, what is the delaying and what is the inevitable? You're delaying your own growth, and inevitably, if you don't develop these habits, then no matter how much money you acquire, you will never change in the sense because I haven't changed the way that I think. This is why your mindset is so important. Oftentimes, people reference the term mindset. Well, let's really dive into the word and understand what it truly means. If your mind is set upon something, then nothing can move it because it is set. So if you are set on being a good steward over what you have, being responsible with your money, making good, strong financial decisions that will put you in a position where you don't have to deal with a lot of unnecessary stress or what I like to call self-inflicted pressure. The pressure is inflicted upon you because you put yourself in a position to experience this. This, by definition, goes back to the fact that you become what you think about. Remember this. You become what you think about. So what does that have to do with being a good steward? Think about being a good steward. Think about being financially responsible to yourself as well as to your family. Develop good spending habits. It might sound somewhat rudimentary. It might sound somewhat redundant, but it does not negate the fact that these principles within themselves are the principles and the guidelines you're going to need to ensure that your future is somewhat secure. Again, the country's $35 trillion in debt. We already see what's going on. Interest rate are sky high. One bedroom, two bedroom apartment is 2 bands. Come on. How can you expect to be 65 getting $3,000 a month and your rent is $2,000? What about your car payment? What about the cell phone, groceries, water bill, car insurance, health insurance, and all the other things? It won't be enough. The deal is right now, you have an opportunity to get out in front of all of it. Does it require sacrifice? Yes, it does. Faith without works is dead. Wishing for something to happen and making something happen are not the same thing. I hope you understand the severity in the situation that the country in its wholeness is facing, because things are not good. Just because you're eating every day and you see people going up and down the highway doesn't mean everything is okay. You're just seeing people go through the emotions of our society. But the fact of the matter is, whenever you go out on a major highway and you see people standing out there with signs, you notice it's indiscriminate, white, black, Indian, Hebrews, Muslims, it doesn't matter. It's touching everyone. It's touching everyone. Poverty is indiscriminate. I'm going to say this to you again. Poverty is indiscriminate, just like death. It's indiscriminate. It touches everyone. The deal is, how much are you willing to allow it to touch you? And it can only touch you to the point in which you reveal your garment. What do I mean by that? To the point in which you are irresponsible. So remember, be a good steward over what you have. It's important. And to realize the privilege that you have to be a good steward over something at all. Many people don't even have the privilege to be a good steward because they have nothing to be a steward of. Don't let yourself get in that position. What else we got?
We had a listener ask if you could clarify what you mean when you use the words ascending or ascension.
To ascend and ascending. What do I mean by ascension and ascending? Now, there is a lot of spiritual connotation that goes along with that, and I can speak to that a little bit, but that's not the gist of that statement. As you ascend, in other words, as you grow, what I want you to become clear about, and this is a very painful truth, that everyone is not meant to go. That everyone cannot come with you, especially usually as people you care about. You might find yourself either vibrating on a different frequency. You might find yourself believing a little bit different than most, which is fine, to each his own, if you will. But as you ascend, be prepared for the pain that comes along with your ascension. What are the pains of ascension? Loneliness, number one. Usually, as a person tries to better themselves, they will find themselves by themselves because people are only cool with you as long as you're down with what they're doing. I.e., if I smoke a lot of weed and I'm hanging around a bunch of weed smokers, we vibing and kicking it and catching the vibe. But the moment I say I don't want to do that anymore and I want to go in a different direction, it's not as if there's bad blood between us, but just that the vibration or the way that we see life might have changed. And so I'm going in this direction and they're going in that direction. One or three things will happen to people when you hang around a collective group. I'm going to use a very tragic example to get you to see my point. If I hang around a crackhead, either one or two, three things are going to happen. Either I'm going to start smoking crack, he's going to stop smoking crack, or we're not going to hang together. That's what I mean by ascension. As you ascend, you will lose family. You will lose friends. It's not that there's any bad blood between you, but some people are comfortable being where they are. Don't let their comfort stop you. The enemy of success is comfort. I will say this to you again. The enemy of success is comfort, comfortability. You're comfortable. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And what happens is it builds complacency. Once one becomes complacency, it's like the muscles in the body. They atrophy. If you don't use them, you lose them. Isn't that what they say? It's the same with the mind and with the spirit. So as you continue to ascend in your progress of life, as you continue to move forward in your life, be prepared to lose a lot of people along the way. By definition, does not mean that you're better than them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is you're just different from them. You're just different. And hopefully in your uniqueness, in you becoming different, in you and how you're conducting yourself, if you will, and your behaviors, your characteristics, how you differentiate yourself from others, if you will. All right? That you are a beacon of light to them, and in your differences, it inspires them to change and to be different as well. One of the things that troubles me with our society is conformity. Many of us conform with the norms, our societal norms, and many of us don't even know why we do it. This is why I teach my mentees. It is very important that one learns to think for him or herself. But most people are part of a collective. It's like a beehive, if you will. There's a queen bee and a bunch of worker bees. Such is life in this country. Most people are worker bees, and they kill themselves all day long, if you will, and die. And they think that's the extent of their life. I want you to understand that your ascension is something that you're in total control over. It is entirely up to you how quickly you ascend and where you ascend to. Obviously, there are ancient principles that have always been talked about, from prayer, meditation, fasting, and things of that nature. We all know this to be true. But outside of those basic spiritual principles, your ascension will also touch on the material side as well, particularly with people that you love and you care about. So as you're ascending throughout your journey, remember, forgetting the things of the past. You can do nothing about the past except learn from it. And lastly, as you move forward with kindness, determination, sheer will, perseverance, patience, and persistence. But also at the same time, be very much aware that as I ascend, I might lose those along the way. But I will tell you this, as you ascend, you might lose a few, but at the same time, usually you'll gain a few. Life is always in flux. The deal is, as it's changing, what are you changing into? And I hope that whatever you're changing into, it is something that you would be proud of being as you change. So your ascension is absolutely essential to your progression. Again, your ascension is absolutely essential to your progression. So make sure that you are progressing in the right way and ascending in a good way, but be prepared to lose people along the way. I hope that helps.
All right, it looks like we have time for one more, so we'll end it on a great note.
Okay, what we got?
Can you expand upon counting your blessings, and how do you know how privileged you are?
You know, I think a lot of times we take for granted our privilege. What do I mean by that? You know, if you have food on your table and you have a roof over your head, you are wealthier than 75% of the world. Because we live in this country and we see such abundance, and we go in these grocery stores and there's aisles of food, there's rows of meat and canned goods and all these other things, which is great. It's just awesome that we have this available to us. But a lot of times we forget the privilege, because I can assure you that everyone in the world does not have that same privilege. If you have someone that loves you, if you have a husband that's willing to work and put in 12-hour days to love you and your family and to take care of you as his wife and to take care of his children, excuse me, you're very privileged, especially with divorce rates are at 50%. If you are a man and you have a wife that loves you, she supports you, she is nurturing, she's caring, she sees about your well-being, and she loves you, you're a very privileged person. If you have the ability just to hop into a car and to go to where you want to go, you're very privileged. If you're healthy, if you can see, if you can read, if you can hear, maybe everyone is not able to hear, everyone is not able to see, and I can assure you everyone is not able to eat. I guess what I'm trying to get everyone to understand is regardless of the challenges that you might be facing, regardless of the things that might be difficult to overcome, the fact of the matter is altitude is determined by attitude. Don't ever lose your perception of being grateful for the privilege you have. The number one privilege you have is to be alive. You are alive. The greatest question you should ask yourself is, why am I alive and what am I here to do? Many of us will become distracted through social norms, if you will, which is fine, I get it. But me, I beg to differ. The fact here at Evolution Now is to get you to do exactly what the title entails, for you to evolve. You must understand why you're alive and the privilege that you have in your existence. Now, life can be very difficult. I can assure you of this. I'm very much well abreast of that. Let there be no doubt. But at the same time, it can be very fulfilling and rewarding. The challenges that we face on a daily basis come and go, the ebb and flow of life. But never forgetting that it's a privilege, because I'll leave you with these words. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. Understand the privilege that you have and don't ever take it for granted. We're very privileged. Let's never lose sight of that. Listen, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Evolution Now. As always, hit the comment, hit the subscribe, hit the follow. Check me out on Instagram at @TheTXJohnson. I'm on TikTok as well. That's Terrance.x.Johnson on TikTok. And check me out on YouTube, the Evolution Now podcast with Mr. Johnson. It is truly a privilege. I thank you for your time. I wish you all the very best. And remember, it is your mind that makes it real. Have a blessed day.